Oh hi, as you can see I've got a new sharpening system. This is the Edge Pro Apex, which was sent to me for a review by Edge Pro, which I very much appreciate. And I've been using it lately for the past 2 or 3 weeks, familiarizing myself with the design. So far I've been using the Worksharp, but I've run into a few issues here and there. And also the Worksharp only does convex edges. If I want to sharpen a flat grind, then I'm out of luck. This, by the way, is also suitable for longer blades like swords. It's definitely more awkward that way. I'm going to show that in another video. For today, I want to resharpen this Bowie here, which you may have seen in a review. It was pretty beat up, and I'm kind of restoring it now. I've put some shims in to fix the loose guard, and yeah, now it's definitely time to take care of that edge, which is not very good. As I start out here, the first thing I need to know is what edge angle this is. Now I've got one of these here. It's called the Hobbygoni, which is an edge protractor. So it's not the dots on the center that you're looking for, but the curved lines on the outside. And yeah, it looks like it's 30 degrees. Here's the manual, and it tells you which markings are what angle. It only goes up to 24, so I could go a little bit higher to get the 30, or I can just go to 24. So first off, before I put it on, I want to put a bit of masking tape on here so that the frame of the device itself doesn't get scratched up. You can also use masking tape to cover up the surface of the blade and just leave the edge exposed so you don't scratch up the blade. But it looks like I'll have to polish this a bit anyway, so I'm not really worried about that right now. So then you pick the stone. Coarsest one here is the 120, which I'm not going to use. Here is the 220. I don't know if you can see the number, but you gotta trust me on that. And then here is the 400, 600, and there's the 1000. And then there are these all metal holders that you can put polish tapes on. Comes with quite a number of them. So that's for the extra fine polish. This one here is 3000 grit. As you can see, the device has suction cups here, which personally I'm not happy with. Don't seem to have the right surface here. It needs a very smooth surface. If it's textured in any way, it doesn't work properly. So let's get to it. Here's the 220 stone, and it also comes with this water bottle here. You're supposed to put a bit of dish soap in there to keep the stones clean. So some people like to soak the stones in water for a while, but it doesn't seem to be necessary. Like on the instructional DVD that it comes with, it also tells you just to put some water on the surface rather than soak it. It's probably not wrong to soak them, but I just don't think it's necessary. Then you just put the stone in, tighten it up. Okay, I'm going to set it to 24. Now this should be less than the current angle. Just going to grab a Sharpie here and mark the factory edge. So we want the edge to be parallel and as much of the blade on there as possible. But of course it needs to stick out over the edge. There we go. So as I grind, I'll see where the Sharpie is removed. There is a little bit of Sharpie left at the edge, which tells me that then the angle, I can continue here and just change the angle of the edge, but it would be quite a bit more work and would require more metal to be removed if I want to change it entirely. I'd rather set it a little higher. Now mark again. That looks pretty good. So I think I can go with that. So you see these two stops here. This stop makes sure that you don't slide off over the edge, and this one makes sure that you don't jam your hand into the edge. So the advantage of the system here is that it's perfectly consistent. If you were to do this by hand, you would have to maintain the angle throughout, which is not that easy. And I mean, we're not machines, so there's a chance that you're going to throw it off a little bit here and there, whereas this is always the same angle because of the guide here. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say always, it depends a little bit. If the thickness of the blade changes, then that might vary the angle a little bit. So this essentially goes on until there's a burr developed on the other side. I can feel a little bit, but not too much yet. So I have to keep going for a while longer. There's definitely a good burr now, so I can move up along the blade. Of course, this takes a lot longer compared to the work sharp or any other belt sander, but a nice thing is that it's harder to mess up and there's no risk of overheating the blade. Okay, so now that I have a burr throughout the entire edge, I can flip it around and do the same thing on the other side. I'm not going to show you all of it, there's really no point, it's just the same thing, only with the blade flipped over. So now the grind looks pretty good. I've got a burr going on here. I neglected this section of the blade a little bit because this is not necessarily essential to be that sharp, and this becomes a little difficult because of how thin it gets. But so what I'm going to do now is flip it around and do one pass just with the weight of the stone itself without applying any pressure. And what that's supposed to do is knock off the burr. Like that, and on the other side as well. What I also like to do to make sure that the burr is gone is drag the edge through a piece of wood. Because this is a common issue when you start learning sharpen. When you get the burr, it's essentially kind of a wire edge, so it feels sharp to the touch and it will cut, but it's not going to last. Like, this comes off pretty quickly. And so now that I've sharpened it on both sides and knocked the burr off, this is sharp. Like, I can feel that it's not sliding off my thumbnail here. Well, further up here it does, because I haven't sharpened that. And if I wanted to leave it at this grit, I could grab the ceramic rod that it comes with and give this a few passes. So again, this is to make sure that the burr is completely gone, so that you have a durable edge. So now you can see it does cut. Which it didn't before. It's still a fairly rough job so far. So I'm going to move up to the next grid, which is the 400. Now you can probably skip that. And there are people who go directly from 220 to 1000 grid, and I guess there's nothing wrong with it, but I'd like to take a bit more time on the lower grids. So here's the 400 grid edge. Definitely nicer. I'm gonna go to the 600 now. By the way, one thing I also like about this system is that you don't have to worry about your lungs. So if you use a belt sander, there's going to be a lot of dust unless you have one of those expensive wet sander systems. So you may have to wear a dust mask or something. And in an apartment, that's not great either. But this here, since it's wet the entire time, there's really no risk. Okay, so 600 grit. Now I could leave it at that, since this is a perfectly serviceable edge, but I want to bring it up to 1000, because that should make it shaving sharp. Like with the belt sander, if you make any sort of wrong movement, you can do a lot of damage to the blade, and yourself too, for that matter. It's a power tool after all. Whereas this, there's not that much that can go wrong. And it feels like I have a little more control over it. It's a bit more messy with the water and sludge. But then again, it's not like doing it with a belt sander isn't messy at all. And you've got the metal dust everywhere. So yeah, I think for right now, I probably prefer this one. Even though it is more work. And I guess there is something therapeutic about this, so to speak, kind of a meditative exercise. You know, it's very much like hand sharpening. In fact, it kind of is hand sharpening with water stones, except that you have the guide to make sure that it's perfectly even. Now, if you're good enough at sharpening, of course, you can argue, you know, why bother spending the money on this? You can just buy the stones and do it yourself, but it takes a lot of time to get good at it. I mean, even this takes a while to get used to and get the hang of and become fairly good. But freehand sharpening with stones takes quite a while, and not everybody may have the time to become really good at it. Now, of course, what you can do with hand sharpening, what you can do this way, is you can produce a convex edge if you do it by hand. Because if you roll the blade as you do that, you will create a convex edge. There's not an option here. But for just a flat grind, this is certainly more precise. So I'm not going to spend hours on this. I just want to get it to a nice smooth edge. Yeah. Nice and easy. I can cut tiny little slivers of the paper. And let's see if it also cuts with a straight downward chop without a slicing motion. And as you can see, it does. So that is nice and sharp. Doesn't even need the slice. Okay, so I'm going to spend a little more time on it off camera because it's way easier that way if I don't have to worry about the recording. And I'm also going to use the polish tape. I want to see how far I can bring it. Okay, let's see how sharp it is now. Alright, I'm back after about 2 weeks, and I've now got a much better setup. Got one of these foldable workbenches here, which are pretty suitable for this sort of purpose. Wobbles a little bit, but not too bad. And also got a better way of mounting this now. So one thing I need to point out, that it also comes with this glass plate here that's supposed to be used together with silicon carbide to level the stones after a while. And this can also be used to put the suction cups on because they will stick to the glass. And this ring here, which I think is rubber, is going to stick better to the surface. Now, I still haven't had much more luck with this, with the surfaces that I have available here. Edge Pro has now sent me an extension piece that threads in here, and it's got an aluminum bar down here which you can clamp to a workbench. They've also sent me the clamp. And this is a much better system now. And what I can do now is just hold on to the bench while doing this. So I wanted to do a little extra polishing on this knife here. They've also sent me a pretty strong magnet that I taped to the underside. So this is also quite helpful because it holds on to the knife a little bit. I've got the 3000 grit polish tape on there now. And for this, I'm just going to do pressure on the downward stroke so I don't cut into the tape. So final polishing here, you can do that ad nauseum really. The more you do it, the better, technically. I mean, it depends. If you prefer a toothier edge, then this is not what you want to do, but different philosophies and approaches to sharpening, of course. So yeah, this is a pretty good setup. I'm definitely happier with that now. Now the suction cups might not give you any trouble if you've got the right kind of surface available, but in my case it just didn't work out too well. But this is pretty good. And also with the magnet, that's pretty helpful. And yeah, so I definitely like it. It's a good sharpening system. It makes it easy. It's you can't really mess up too much. I mean, of course, there's always potential for messing something up. But, you know, compared to a lot of other sharpening methods, especially, you know, freehand stones, you can do a lot of mistakes there. And as said, with a belt sander, you can also do quite a bit of damage if you don't know what you're doing. And this is definitely an effective system. It's easy to use. It's also reasonably affordable. And you've got a variety of stones available that fit it. So yeah, lots to like about it. I would definitely recommend checking it out if you're looking for a sharpening system. It's really mainly if you've got a fairly large number of blades to maintain, then this really makes sense. Of course, there can be some issues if you have exceptionally thick blades. You have to adjust here a little bit. You may have to go off the markings to do that more precisely. There could also be more different markings for different angles. That would be nice. Also, if there was a flat area here to put an angle cube, that would be a nice thing as well. The price of the Edge Pro Apex is around $250 US, which seems appropriate to me for what you're getting. If it seems expensive to you, then keep in mind that this is a tool that you can use essentially for a lifetime. You only have to replace the stones. And sharpening systems can get very expensive. You can easily go up into the $600, $800, or even over $1,000 range. They also have a Pro model which costs more but adds additional features, and I'll leave the links down below in the video description. So personally, I think it's worth it. There are also two other sharpening systems which are similar but in a higher price range, which I'm going to test. We'll see about that. So I hope you found it helpful, and thanks for watching.